Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of the At the Coffee Table podcast. I'm Jason Klink, your host, and I'm here with Dana Bentz of StreamYard.com. StreamYard, if you don't know, is a social media platform, and I use it specifically. And I actually was on Dana's podcast 2 years ago and
Yep.
learned about StreamYard. But I use it for my podcast. I use it for the video streaming, but also for the audio part of the At the Coffee Table podcast. Dana, welcome to the virtual coffee table. I appreciate you joining me
Thank
today.
you. Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me on the show. I think it's so fun that was kind of like our background. Like I had you on my show way
Yeah,
back in the day before I even worked for StreamYard, but you were on my StreamYard show.
right.
And then now here we are. I get to be on your StreamYard show. I think that's so fun.
Yeah, I was that was my very first podcast experience.
No
So much
way.
fun, and it took me it took me 2 years to. And we were just kind of talking about this offline. Was it took me 2 years to pull the pin and finally do this.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring you on because well, first give everybody your history, your journey, how
Yeah.
you went from real estate agent to director of marketing at StreamYard, and how
Yeah.
that all came together.
Yeah. So, long story short, my background is in sales and marketing for real estate. So I sold real estate for about 4.5 years or so. And then I started a podcast live stream show while I was still working in real estate, to interview other real estate agents like yourself, other real estate. I had a mortgage broker on, people kind of around the industry. I had some of investors on, real estate investors. I just felt that live streaming was my way to kind of grow my network of people that I knew, and I thought the idea of live streaming was so fun and so interesting and so neat to me that it was just fun for me to create a live stream show. So fast forward now, I think it's been a year and a half or so, maybe a year after that show. While I was still in real estate, I knew the CEO of StreamYard, because we went to the same high school together.
Oh wow.
And we had kind of stayed in touch, and I knew who he was when I was using the product, of course.
Hmm.
And we had kind of been in talks, been in conversation, and I was just like, I love this product. Like, StreamYard is so neat. And I really liked real estate, but I had always wanted to transition into tech and be at a startup. I admired that lifestyle so much. Like,
Hmm.
you work 24/7 and you're so invested in this product, and it's like, it's so innovative, it's so techy, it's so new
Right,
age or whatever.
right,
So that lifestyle really like inspired me. And so I had always wanted to make the transition from real estate to tech, but I didn't really know how I would do that. I didn't know, like, I didn't want to be in the sales side of it, because that just kind of felt like I wasn't making a transition at all. I was just staying in sales, from real
right,
estate sales to like tech sales.
right.
And so, right before COVID hit, about probably almost a year ago or so, they StreamYard was growing. Like, StreamYard, they were growing super fast, just because more and more people are starting to live stream.
Yeah,
More and more people started going online in
right.
March. And so they needed marketing help, and I have a marketing background, and so they brought me on as the head of marketing, because they needed someone to run that role, and I had the right background for it. So that's how I kind of made the transition out of real estate and into the tech world now.
That's super interesting, and it really brings up to me. It brings up kind of a validation, and a validation point is, you know, in life there's pivots. You know,
Yeah.
I went and left a public safety world after 20 plus years and just pivoted and
Yeah.
went into business. I started in real estate, and right before you and I had that first podcast, I started to see, and the more I learned, the more, because I knew nothing about business, nothing, zero, didn't know anything about real estate, had to teach
Wow.
myself. I mean, I had a really great mentor when I started, as
Okay.
far as real estate went, but
Hmm.
it was constantly learning, constantly evolving. And I recognized in 17, 18 that there was the real estate was moving towards social media. It was, there's traditional things, and there's traditional avenues that the real estate business uses with, phone calls and cold calling and door knocking and mailers, and
Hmm.
that has its validity. But everybody is, especially this year, is doing this.
Yep.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
recognizing it then, and then all, you learn from the Gary V's and Brian Cristiano and a lot of those big marketing gurus, and they're like, well, you got to be on audio, and you got to start a podcast, and you got to, just to build your brand and
Right.
so on,
Right.
tell your story.
Yep.
So do you, I guess my question is, have you, I'm sure you have, but have you seen such one of those huge upticks since the beginning of the year with the live streams, the podcasts, and people going, "Ooh, I got to do this now because I have time."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was big. The biggest like uptick, like J curve, was right around April, May, which
Hmm.
where StreamYard just like I think we doubled in size in like a 2 week period or something crazy. And before COVID, we weren't a small company, so that was
Right.
big growth. So we saw it not only when everyone was stuck at home and people now have time and people were creating these shows, and we had so many entrepreneurs who are like, my customers still need to hear from me. Like I
Right.
still need to grow my brand,
Right.
but they're all stuck at home and so am I. Like, what am I going to do? And
Yeah.
so we saw a lot of those people start shows like a show like this one, where they could connect with the people around them on social media, because now social media is the only way to market, it seems, other than
Yeah.
like email. That's the
Right.
only way to touch these people in their homes. But even before then, live streaming has been picking up as an industry, we've found.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because I think it's just because live streaming is such an easy way to create good content. Like it doesn't take very much time and it's a really good piece of content marketing. So like
Yeah.
when you make a podcast or when you make a blog, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of like going back and forth and fixing it and making it perfect and editing a blog. But when you go live and when you do a podcast like this or a live stream like this, there might be like an hour of prep right before, and then we go live for 30 minutes, an hour, and that's it. Like the piece of content is done. So I think people have really liked that aspect of
Yeah.
this type of content marketing,
Yep.
especially for social media. And so that's why it's gotten more and more popular. And as all the social media sites have come out with their different live versions, like the most recent one is LinkedIn Live about a year ago.
Hmm.
It's kind of the live streaming industry is slowly becoming a household thing. Like everyone's got a show.
Yeah, and what's ironic is that I invested in a business coach this year, and one of the things
Congrats.
was thanks. And one of the things he was saying was, your lives, you got to do more of your lives. You're getting more reach, and I'm like, and we were talking. He goes, "Oh, did you see your last live? Did you see how many views that you had on it?" And I'm like, I said, to be honest with you, I didn't go back and check. He goes, "You got to go back and check." So it was like almost 300 views just
Nice.
on this one live, and I went, "Oh, well, there's something to be said here." So
Yeah.
um, I find that, and maybe you can relate from your time in real estate, like there's a core group of even business owners, real estate agents, business owners that have kind of embraced social media marketing, doing the lives, doing their story and their brand, and you'll see them all the time. And then you got some folks that dabble here and dabble there,
Yeah.
um, and and then you got other folks that have been in business or in real estate for a long period of time. They're like, nah, I'm not comfortable putting my face in front, or my voice in front of anybody else.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think the average age of a real estate agent is like 58 or something crazy like
Yeah,
that. And
yeah,
so I think a lot of people are like, I noticed in my time in real estate that a lot of people didn't want to like they weren't interested in social media. They weren't interested in innovating. They weren't interested in like using cool tech products for real estate specifically. And I'm not really sure why that is. It might be just because these people have been doing it forever and they like the way that they do it. But yeah, you're so right that like social media is where you need to be. And it's okay if you don't feel like what I really liked about my podcast show that I did that you were on way back a couple years ago. I
Right.
do a different show now for StreamYard, but that show, what I really liked about it was it wasn't about me and my content. Like I would have other people on the show and I would get to ask them questions. So I got to kind of get around my public speaking fears and my like, oh, I don't know if people want to listen to me and my content fear by
Right.
just interviewing others. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't about me as a realtor or my expertise as a realtor. I got to interview other people, but in turn, it grew my like social media following and it grew how many people that knew I was a realtor, which is what it's all about in real estate, is people knowing
Right.
that you sell houses.
Right.
And so I think that's one thing that people could keep in mind if they wanted to start a live stream show, is that it doesn't have to be just you going live on camera and it's just you and you have to come up with a script. Like it doesn't have to be that dramatic or stressful
No.
or about you. It can be about your guest or your interviewee.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's kind of why that's the real basis behind this, my podcast, was just to have conversations. It doesn't have to be scripted, it doesn't have to be completely outlined.
Yeah.
And what's been fun for me is reaching out to people and say, hey, you want to be on my podcast?
Yeah.
Sometimes you swing and you miss, and other times you go, oh, wow, that worked. Because, I've had a couple of, I've had one, now I don't know if you know the Real Business Owners on Instagram. They're Trevor Cowley, Cal Goodman. They run an accounting firm in Utah, but they're part of the Arete Syndicate with Andy Frisella and Ed Milet.
Oh,
And they've become this following. They've just become more influencers. And I was lucky enough to have Trevor on my show during COVID, just to pick it. I heard him on another podcast. He goes, you know what? People that are influencers or successful people, they just want to help, and people are afraid just to ask. So I went, sure, I'll ask. So I sent him a DM on Instagram and said, hey, would you? He goes, yeah, absolutely. I was like,
wow.
wow, all right.
Wow. Well, and
So,
people like that, they want to get there, like they want to
yeah,
promote what they're working on, what they're doing. Like
right.
I want to talk about StreamYard. I want to tell people about StreamYard. So it's like that's another reason people will want to be on your show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that's been the fun part for me. And I have friends or family that like, oh, you do a podcast. So how about like, I mean, I sat here and had a podcast episode, 2 podcast episodes with my brother-in-law just to talk politics, and he loves it. He's just like, yeah, and he's the most reserved dude that you can meet.
Awesome. That's
And
so fun.
and he loves doing it. And
Yeah.
to me, it's fun. To me, it's an avenue to get out information for people to connect. Because when and you probably know this as well as I do, but here in New York, when the COVID hits, we go into lockdown. Now we're 2 weeks in lockdown. We can't do any real estate, nothing. And
Yes.
everybody's going, oh, what are we gonna do? Business is gonna crash. It's gonna be an awful year. But
Yeah.
and with all that time, I'm like, well, let's throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And I've been off and running with this. One of my partners, Nicole McDonald, she joins me every now and again to help co-host the podcast and talk about different topics. And that's really been the fun part for me. And StreamYard's been a great platform for that.
Wow, that's so great to hear. And I love that. I love your format of the podcast. Like some people, they've got they've got all the questions that they have to ask and they're all scripted and like that. But it seems like that's less of a conversation and more of like a business interview.
Right.
And I like
Right.
your conversations with people, like conversations over coffee. It's just kind of like we're like you and I get to connect and we get to talk about real estate and social media and
Right.
marketing and StreamYard. And then also your viewers get to connect with you and what you're doing, what you're working on, who you're meeting. They get to connect with me. If I share this with my viewers, they get to see what I'm doing with you. So it's,
Right.
it's so much connection while we're
Yes.
all stuck in lockdown still.
And that's just it. We have all these restrictions, and some areas of the country is more restricted than others. But humans need that interaction. It's just basic Maslow hierarchy or whatever you want to call it. So
Yeah.
humans need that connection, and this, I think, is even if it's getting on something and talking to your family on a Zoom call or a Facebook Messenger call or something.
Yep.
I think that's been huge for all of us
Yeah.
going
It's keeping
forward.
us sane.
Yeah, yeah. What's normal anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So now that you've been well entrenched into the marketing world
Yeah.
with StreamYard, what trends are you seeing? What trends are you seeing? Maybe
Ooh.
ending this year and going into next.
Marketing trends specifically or social media specifically?
Either or, either
Okay.
or. What sticks out to you as far as either social media marketing or
Yeah.
otherwise?
That's a good question. So social media is has only has only become more and more important in the last several months. But it seems like the things that are growing or the things that are sticking have been content marketing, because that can be consumed online, and
Right.
email marketing. So a lot of
Oh,
people think email marketing is dead and is over, but it seems like it's still alive, and it's still a way to get directly to your customer or to your client or whoever you need to target. For us, it's our
right.
users. And it really depends on how you're doing your email marketing. Like it really needs to be less spam and more connecting. So here we
Right.
go again with how connection is so important.
Right.
But if your email marketing is coming across as spam, or like sign up for this sale, or work for me because, or work with me because blah blah blah, people don't really care about that, and you're going to go to spam and they're going to delete your email and whatever. But if you're connecting with your customer or user in email, in social media, with your blog, with all your content, somehow online, when you're connecting with them, that's how they're going to stay with you as a whatever you are, as a StreamYard company, as a real estate
Hmm.
agent, as whatever service product you have. That's how they're going to stay. They get to stay connected to you because you're connecting with them. So
Right.
I think email's a good way to do that. I've seen more text marketing become kind of a trend. We haven't played around with that at all at StreamYard.
Right.
But I know Gary Vee is very big into text marketing, where
Right.
he'll send out his phone number and people will text him back on that. I'm not sure how it works, but that's a great way to, like, you're getting into the lives of your customers. Like physically being in their phone is so, like, that's a good place to be as a company or as a brand or as a
Right.
agent. So that's another interesting method. But I think the biggest one, and I'm not even sure, I'm biased because I work at StreamYard, but I have seen that live streaming is such a big part of content marketing and of building a brand online, that
Hmm.
like all businesses, most businesses are already live streaming, but all businesses need to be live streaming this year, next year, into the coming years, because live video is so much more prioritized on these platforms now, like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. They're all pushing these live content because
Right.
there's more engagement, and obviously they're trying to sell ads, so they want you to be engaged with the content, and so
Yep.
that's what they'll prioritize now.
Yep.
And so that's why live streaming is that's the next trend. Like that's the trend that's trending now, and even when we all go back to work, it's still going to be important.
Yeah, super fascinating to me because I think about, so I do a weekly email newsletter for my real estate business. Something I learned from
Nice.
a real estate coach I followed online. That's his big thing. We can, stay in touch with people, stay in touch
Yeah.
with people.
Stay in touch. Yep.
Um, So, and it's funny because I've had people say, well, I opened up your email and I was reading it and, this brought me to this conversation, whatever it might be. And it just happened the other day. But for me, with the weekly newsletter email, it is not always buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. Nothing that I do with buy and sell real estate. It's very mixed in because I think people see that enough.
Yeah.
But I'd like to throw in, recipes or, your fall maintenance on your house or, different
Yeah.
value-driven type information.
Yeah. Like helpful things.
Helpful, yeah. And I think that transcends into the live video to be able to come out and do stuff like this and just, not necessarily promote. And I'm sure it's a side product of doing this stuff is promoting your brand, promoting yourself, and so on.
Yeah.
But you're able to share this information, try to bring value to somebody that's out there. And maybe it's something they haven't heard yet. Maybe this conversation we're having right now is something that, a real estate agent thought about, but really hadn't grasped. And now they're kind of like, oh, wow, light bulb went off, or anybody in business.
Right. Right. And it could be just like you said, anyone. It could be another real estate agent who sees you and is like, oh, Jason does a podcast. Like, this is really cool. Like, I could do this too. And then they somehow can get inspired to do it themselves. Or it can be all your clients who follow your newsletter and they're like, oh, I should really be doing this for my business too. Like whatever I'm working on. Maybe they have more time now that it's Corona and we're all stuck at home. Maybe they have more time to do something and they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about that for a while and I should be doing that too. So you're so right that this is also like, it's just another piece of value. Like it's something that's helpful to people when you have different people on. Like your interview show, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. You can talk about politics. You can talk about real estate and social media, and people might not be interested in all these conversations, but since you have them so consistently and every single week, there's going to be some episode that people are going to be super interested in. Like someone's going to love the social media conversation we have, and someone's going to hate it, and someone's going to like the political conversations you have. Like it really just depends. So it's so neat that you get to do all these different kinds of, like your show doesn't have like we only talk about real estate. Like you get to talk about all these different industries and topics, which is so neat. And it's also so neat to have different guests on. Like that opens up your realm of who you can have on as a guest. Yeah,
absolutely. That's probably, like I said, that's the most fun part for me is just being able to connect and talk to different folks in different industries and pick their brain. And, hopefully I come out with some kind of something that I learned.
Right.
As a sidebar from it.
Yeah, so. That's what I really like doing about. So one of the shows I do now is interviewing people who do StreamYard shows to kind of spotlight what cool ways people are using StreamYard. And I actually selfishly do it to learn how I can make my show cooler because it's so fun to learn about like all the different ways you can do an interview show and make it interesting and have a fancy intro video and all these advertising. Like people do crazy cool things. But I love that I would do the show even if no one was watching. And I think that's an important thing to think about when you're making a show. So exactly like you said, like you're trying to get something out of this. Like you're learning from whoever you're interviewing. And I think that's so important to starting a show, because then it doesn't matter in the beginning. A lot of people are like, I don't want to start a show because I might not have any viewers. And like, that would be really sad. But it doesn't really matter because you always start with not very many viewers and you have to grow the show to have viewers. Like no one knows what your show's going to be about when you first start, but it doesn't really matter when you just care about what the guest is saying. Like if you really want to learn about whatever industry you're in, if you want to hear from this guest you're having on your show, I think that's the most important thing to growing a big, important, very good podcast or live stream show. And I love that you feel the same way about that in how much value you can get from the guest you have on your show.
Now, I hope anybody that's watching or listening just understands the golden nugget that just got dropped there. That I think the most important part of that was it just doesn't matter. So, and one of the most important things I think I learned early on is Nobody cares what you look like because that's what you look like. Nobody cares what you sound like because that's what you sound like. If you're in real life person or if you're on a streaming. So to be able just to go in and have fun with it, number one, to
Yep.
provide value, number two, and to make those connections, number three. Like you said, it doesn't matter how many watch, how many don't watch.
Yeah.
If you're doing it with those, to me, if you're doing with those three things in mind, you're winning even before you get started.
Yep. Oh, 100% agree. 100% agree. Just like you said, those three things, like none, however many viewers you get or however many followers you have, that doesn't matter when you focus on those things.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's great. And I hope everybody, hope everybody. If you take away nothing else from the last 25 plus minutes, that's the part you need to take away from. Anybody that's watching or listening, that's the part you need to take away from. That's awesome.
I love it.
Dana, I appreciate you joining me today. It's been super cool to talk to you again. I think your insight is fantastic. If people wanted to connect with you, how would they connect with you throughout all these platforms?
Ooh. Well, I'm literally on every platform, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm just Dana Bentz. Twitter, I'm real Dana Bentz. Facebook, Dana Bentz. And you can also email me at contact@streamyard.com if you want to get a hold of me or if you want to talk about StreamYard. That's the best place to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been super cool. I think I'm more than likely going to tag you in again at some point down the line, just because it's just been a great conversation.
Well, next time it's my turn again because I had you on a couple years
true.
ago, and
That's true. That's right. Yeah. Now I'll hey, you name the time and the place, and I'll jump on your show too.
I love it. I love it. Well, it was such a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for asking me to be a guest.
Absolutely, my pleasure. For anybody that's watching or listening, if you could like, comment, and share this, drop any comments, tell us what you think. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer. Share it with anybody else that might be in the business, real estate world, marketing world that might need to hear this. Maybe you've been thinking about starting that podcast or live stream and you weren't sure where to start. Well, now you do, and feel free to reach out to Dana online, and I'm sure she'll give you some tips and hints to do your own podcast and live stream. Dana, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. With that, we'll end the show for today. I appreciate everybody's tuning in. And this is the At the Coffee Table podcast, where we, pull up our chairs to the virtual coffee table and talk about anything and everything. And hopefully we all get something out of it. So with that, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.